Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode 234 of the Thoughtium Navigating Now virtual roundtable series. I'm Anthony Ewing, CEO, co-founder here at Thoughtium, and thrilled to be at the table once again. We go live every Thursday at 3 p.m. Central. We want to welcome all of those folks who are joining from the extended Thoughtium community. Particularly, we want to welcome those folks that join from LinkedIn. We are so thrilled to see new members join our LinkedIn family week over week. Those folks that are engaging with our content, those folks that are watching our live feed, or maybe just stopping by in their feed. We want to thank you for your participation. And today we've got a wonderful episode with a perennial leader here at the Navigating Now virtual roundtable series. Matt Cimaglia. He is the founder and managing partner at Quantum Coast Capital. And Matt is a leader of many things, people, organizations, but he's also a leader of new ideas and new technologies. And if you haven't heard of quantum computing, that is okay. Today's kind of level of fidelity is going to be such that we get you a little bit closer to this big opportunity, and particularly the impact of quantum computing on us as business leaders. So Matt, welcome back to the table. So good to have you.
Thanks for having me again.
Yeah. So you have called quantum computing the next leap in human capability. Tell us a little bit more about why.
Yeah, I mean, it's really the next industrial revolution. So I remember being 12 and getting my first modem. And it was this modem, it was this moment in life where I just sort of exploded with possibility. And at that time period, just seeing different things in technology evolve. And I've always been involved in deep tech in some way or another in my life. And I've been candidly kind of bored with technology over the last decade. I mean, there have been some incredible things, don't get me wrong, but everything is sort of a better iteration of itself. And when I started reading about quantum about 7 years ago, all of a sudden my mind just exploded with, this is going to be such a paradigm shift in how we evolve and how we interact with technology.
It's interesting that you say that this dawned on you, or that came into your view 7 years ago. So the world was a totally different place. I mean, it was maybe the early dark ages of AI. AI was nowhere near the household name that it is today, or in the zeitgeist. It was even pre kind of crypto boom. So, as this came into your foreground, were you also paying attention to some of these other emerging technologies? And
how do
you maybe stack them up?
The irony of that is I come from a communications background. So I owned and operated a pretty large full service creative agency for about a decade and a half. And when I had exited that business, I started looking really into what's next. Like I had seen the evolution of technology, especially at the beginning of the business that I had created, where nobody was doing this. Nobody was online. Nobody was able to stream, because at that point it was like postage stamp videos on a Real Player or something like that. QuickTime was very in its early stages. So I had a really big notion at that time period that video on the web was going to be a massive monumental shift. And candidly, that's what we hung our hat on at my old company. And when I look at even AI, there's an article that I wrote in Entrepreneur Magazine in 2018, and it specifically stated, that I expect in the coming years to have AI editors or AI assistant editing, and for the entire advertising industry to have a huge shift because of AI. Yeah. And I remember talking to some other VCs, and they kind of were like, this is science fiction. Like, there's no way this is ever going to happen. And the best possible thing out of that is I was wrong. Yeah. In my article, in the sense that we're actually further along than I ever had predicted in that article. So it's kind of been fun, and for better or for worse, I've been really ahead of the curve on a lot of different technologies. I read a lot. I look at signals in a very unique way. And when I see quantum, it's one of those things that 7 years ago, the signals were maybe once a quarter. It was very theoretical. It was very high level. It was, this could be the possibility one day. Yeah. And then the signals over the course of time started picking up more. So I would say it went from every quarter to seeing something happen in the market, to every month, to every week. And when it started to become every week or a couple times a week, that's when I really started paying attention a couple years ago and saying, this actually is having a monumental shift, and it's starting to rapidly approach its starting point.
Yeah, I love that. And you know, for those of you who are tuning in, we're gonna define or try to define quantum computing here in a moment. But I love that we're starting with this discussion of like, how did this even come into your aperture? Because as leaders, we have this responsibility to stand at the doorstep of our role, of our organization, and look up and out and start to see these trends come through. And a couple of things that you're hearing from Matt are: one, you've got to be okay being wrong. And two, you've got to increase your sensitivity to when you're hearing about something with a slight frequency that you just know that it's in the foreground. Those are the types of signals that we've got to pay attention to. So maybe we go here and move on to something that we probably should have started the show with. What is quantum computing? I bet if you ask 5 engineers, you're probably going to get 7 different definitions. So, you know, this won't be the be all end all definition, but how are you describing it today?
So the funny thing there is I meet a lot of physicists now in my new role, and a lot of them actually say they have no idea how it works. So it's kind of like, okay, so this is the biggest shift in technology, and you're not quite sure how it works. It just does. No, so think about it this way. You know, we have classical computing, which is what we're on right now, right? And classical computing is really great at 1 + 1 = 2, right? You're never going to do that type of an algorithm on a quantum computer. Candidly, it's too overkill for that. So an analogy that I give a lot of people is always, I would be happy to do on a racetrack a Ferrari. That's great. I'm going to do that all day long. I'm going to have the best optimal performance. But in my city street, like in your instance, Chicago, I'm never going to, drive down, Michigan Avenue in a Ferrari, because I'm going to hit every other stoplight and I might maximum be able to go 10 miles an hour, right? It's overkill. But if I was in like a Honda Civic, or I was in, a family car of some sort, it's totally fine. Like that's the optimal performance for that scenario. So when it comes to classical computing and quantum computing, they're very, very different things. And classical computing is processing in bits, so ones or zeros. So everything that we're dealing with right now is binary. And that's very different when you start to go into quantum, because quantum computing is 1 and 0 and everything else in between. So it's this really interesting perspective that if I was, let's say, at a maze, okay, and I'm trying to get out of the maze, I'm at the beginning of it right now. I'm going to go left, right, left, right, left, right. And eventually I hit a wall. I have to start all the way back at the beginning, and I've got to repeat those steps over and over, expending not only large amounts of energy, but large amounts of time. And finally, I'll get out to the exit point of this maze, and I'm out, and I've figured out the path. With a quantum computer, it's able to start at the beginning of the maze and then go out to all permutations at the same time, find the optimal path out, and then go down it. So you're using a lot less time and a lot less energy.
Yeah. Is it safe to say that, at least in our lifetime, Matt, all of the computer technology that we've experienced thus far has been that kind of 1 and 0? Back in the day, I mean, we aren't that old, but like kind of the mainframe days to the advent of PCs to now, how cool these cell phones have become. That's all that 1-0 technology. This quantum is like a true leap from that, right? Like, I mean, this is something that computing has not seen thus far. It's not just like an advanced version of our current, computing power.
I look right now, physically where we're at in terms of the path of quantum computing. And by the way, I want to get into other areas of quantum, because it's not just the hardware. But when you look at quantum right now as a whole, it's not faster than a cluster of GPUs. We know that. That's fine. But what I think is most interesting are companies that are going out there and building quantum algorithms, or they're building quantum applications. They're simulating on a cluster of GPUs, knowing that one day in the future, and again, this is as a leader thinking really ahead, right? It's like, I'm going to go build a highway knowing that there's going to be 1 million people in my city. Instead of building 2 lanes, I'm going to build 4 lanes. Okay. So a lot of these entrepreneurs that we're meeting right now are very forward thinking in their approach of saying, look, we're not quite there yet. We're okay with that. I think the whole world is okay with that. because when they do actually hit their stride, and a quantum computer has what's called quantum supremacy, which means that it outpaces what a classical computer will ever be able to comprehend. That's the game-changing moment. And what I think is great about these leaders and these entrepreneurs is the fact that when that moment happens, nobody will ever be able to catch up to them. So they're not starting once the hardware is available. They're starting today.
I love that. And again, I hope our audience is able to get a little something from the way that Matt is even kind of understanding, assessing, and communicating these new technologies. If you're not an engineer, if you're not in computer science, maybe you're just getting started with new technologies such as AI. The way that we look at these new technologies and these new trends is really the heart of this discussion. Matt, you also say that, even though quantum computing is maybe not fully developed and here right in front of us today, it's so important that even if it's 5 years ahead, we pay attention to it today. And why is that? And particularly as business leaders, like, why should people be paying attention to quantum today?
So I think you have to look back into the past. So history repeats itself. Okay, so in World War II, the Nazis created what's called the Enigma machine. And at that time period, it was the most modern form of encryption that you could imagine, right? If you typed in one letter, a different letter popped out, and every day they'd rechange the keys so that they were always encrypted and nobody could receive their messaging, from their defensible position. So then along came this guy, Alan Turing, who invented what at the time was a computer, right? It was the first mechanical device really to be able to crunch through these numbers. And he had decrypted the Nazi Enigma machine, which, if a person was trying to do it, it would take tens of thousands, if not millions of years to try and decode. So he was able to condense that time period into, minutes or hours, and he would be able to decode what the Nazis were saying every day. Well, when we think about what we're doing right now, you and I are on a secure connection, right? We have some form of encryption that's happening, and all of our cell phones, all of our banking, all of our infrastructure that we live by, my Nest thermostat has encryption on it in some form. But what happens if a computer is fast enough to break that encryption? So when those encryption standards were put in place 20, 30 years ago, we said it's going to take millions of years for a computer to ever be able to go and break that encryption level. Today, with a quantum computer, they're predicting that might happen in seconds. So once we hit this point of quantum supremacy, and we're already seeing it with GPU clusters. I read an article a couple of weeks ago that just a few hundred of the latest NVIDIA GPUs were able to break, I think it was like a 8-digit password that was, and it was only because it was a natural word at that point.
Yeah.
But think about that. That's really scary to think about. And if I'm a business owner, or we spoke to a group of hospitals a couple of weeks ago, and we basically said, today actually is the time that you need to start thinking about a post-quantum encryption strategy for all your data records, for all of your hospital infrastructure, because what we wouldn't want is to have some bad actor come in, penetrate your sort of unimpenetrable, moment here of your hospital, and then all of a sudden you're sitting duck. And we've seen it happen with ransomware attacks. We've seen it happen with other elements where people just weren't as quite secure as they thought they were, and now the stakes are even higher.
I love it. So, as a business leader, we've got to look out for the safety and security of our organization, our team, our data. Quantum has a role in that in the future. What is the relationship to quantum to, the other big term in the zeitgeist, AI? I can imagine there's a relationship that potentially AI gets even better with quantum computing. Quantum computing maybe is helping train larger AI models. Like, how are you making the connection between quantum and AI, or how should we be making the connection?
Yeah, I think that they go very much so hand in hand, and candidly, on the venture side or investor side, this is where we see huge opportunities, because everyone is focused on the shiny object right now, which is AI, and they're not focused on any other areas, candidly, because they only know what everyone else is doing, and there's a very much of a herd mentality that's happening in the sort of venture space. I get really excited about AI when it comes to quantum, because we're going to start doing just incredible things for humanity. Okay, so a really great example is the fact that when we start to think about drug discovery, right now it costs billions of dollars for drug manufacturers to go out and create a drug for the masses. Right? There's a lot of regulation around it. There's a lot of testing. There's a lot of trial and error, candidly, at the beginning stages. So they're not quite sure how they're doing things. So it's adding, different ingredients together to try and have some sort of outcome. And what I love about quantum computing is, first of all, it's built off of quantum mechanics or the principles of nature, essentially. So it's thinking about things in a very different way than what a classical computer would be when we're telling the system, this is what a DNA structure is, and we're sort of giving it instructions. And if I mislabeled it somehow, it's only going to ever know that. But on a quantum computer, it's very different. And where we are going to see massive shifts immediately, and we're already starting to see some of it, is when you have quantum computing working with AI, working with classical high performance computers. That's really sort of the secret sauce of this all. So imagine if you're back at that maze example that I gave at the beginning, right? I'm a classical computer. I'm at the beginning of the maze, and I've got to go try and figure out how to get out of the maze. Well, what if I go and add my quantum buddy and say, hey, go figure out where the path is. Give me a map of where I'm supposed to go. And now the quantum computer does the map, hands it back to the classical system, and now the classical system has a better route out of that maze, right? So going back to drug discovery again, costing billions of dollars and years and decades to discover medicine, we're going to get down to months or weeks or even days. And why that's so important is the cost. So when I start thinking about the cost, if we're able to add high performance computing, AI, and quantum together, and that cost is now maybe $100 for a drug. And by the way, it's not for the masses anymore. It's for your DNA. So that's where I get super excited about quantum, because we get to go into low income communities. We get to go into poor countries. And now we're starting to actually solve real problems with people and humanity. And finally, we're at a point where we're using technology to really solve global problems. And when we start to whittle away at disease and not having access to proper medicine, that starts to really help in a massive economic impact that's been candidly a drain on sort of richer countries or richer people.
I love that application. We have a handful of clients in the life sciences space, biotech, pharma. And these are commercial leaders that, again, have this responsibility of keeping their pulse on new technologies. This is one to keep an eye on. If you are in the pharmaceutical space, if you are in the biotech space or diagnostics, these technologies are so important to understand. I was just watching a roundtable discussion with Sam Altman, and I think it was 5 other founders of big AI companies the other day. And the last question that they asked this panel was, what is the biggest or highest dream use case that you have for this, for I think it was AGI specifically, but let's call it AI technology. And 5 out of the 6 answered with something that had to do with drastically impacting the healthcare landscape and reducing chronic disease over the course of the next 5 to 10 years in ways that we thought would take 100.
Well, and again, that's where quantum condenses time. Right? If I'm now able to take what would take a classical computer, again, highest performant computer you could imagine, taking over 1 million years to process an equation, versus a quantum system that might take weeks. Like, you've now just done a monumental shift. And I love the fact that you actually had said, in terms of other areas of drug, because there's other areas of quantum. And these are other areas that you need to pay attention to right now. So the core areas that our firm focuses on is obviously hardware. So that's kind of what we've been talking about right now. But a lot of those companies are sort of more later stage. But when it comes to the picks and shovels or the infrastructure around quantum networking is a huge area that I see having a great advantage in right now, because a lot of the infrastructure around us, it needs to evolve. I mean, we witnessed this, literally, you and I witnessed this during COVID when we were doing this show, is we had limited bandwidth wherever we were, or I had to be in a specific spot in order to be able to get good signal. And we're just doing something meaningless, or not sort of necessarily having an impact in terms of like humanity.
Right.
But then there's the other areas of quantum is sensing, and kind of going back into the healthcare arena of sensing. There's a device that one of my colleagues got a demo on, which is no bigger than a double iPhone, or a couple iPhones,
Right.
if you will, mashed together. And it was able to put a sensor on somebody's chest and detect what's happening in their heart in such a way that you would only be able to do with a very invasive procedure, or go into a massive MRI, costly machine.
Yeah.
But if you're a technician with no formal training, and you were able to put a device up to somebody's chest, and within seconds, AI is actually telling that technician, hey, this is what's happening with the person, and it's better informing them, we're going back to saving lives again. And then there's other areas of sensors which just blow my mind away, that there's a company out of Colorado specifically that I know of. There's a few others, but they're looking to completely replace GPS. So again, think about that notion for a second, right? We've all relied on GPS for so long, for decades now, that it's kind of hard to imagine what the world would look like without it. And I certainly wouldn't be able to get from point A to point B most times. Yeah. But when you're in areas like Ukraine or Russia right now, where they're jamming GPS signals, I don't know if I'm going north, south, east or west, unless I have an old school compass. And I'm not able to rely on GPS technology for that.
Yeah.
And what these people are doing is they've created a sensor that is pulling from the Earth's magnetic field. And that's something that you can never hack. You can't jam that. And so by detecting where you are in the Earth's magnetic field, coupled with navigation data, they're not only like super accurate on physically where you are in the world, but you can also be underground or underwater now and have the same level of navigation. So think about submarines, think about mining applications. So it's sort of incredible what we're starting to see with the sensor world, amongst other things.
So networking and sensing, along with hardware, maybe the three big applications of quantum.
Yeah, and then candidly, software applications, right? Yeah. I think that's just a natural aspect. And then we always talk about quantum inspired, which is really more of the encryption layer.
Love it. As technical as this conversation can get, I want to circle us back to the importance of having these conversations. And one of the things that I really admire, Matt, about you is that you're willing to kind of step out in front of these new technologies and make some claims, that this is a technology that could be the next leap in human capability. And
I don't even think it's if, I think it's just when. And,
sure.
And I mean, not to sort of jump on top of you too much here, but it's like, I would stress that these conversations are so important today more than ever, because when ChatGPT had its moment a few years ago, Congress erupted, and they invited all of the tech leaders to Congress to say, what is this new AI thing that you're talking about?
Yeah.
And, I've been looking at this for a decade, and it's like, this isn't new. This is just, you actually have had AI on your phones. You've had it in your life all these times, but it's now an inflection point that you're starting to take notice. And I think that quantum will have that moment in 2 or 3 years from now, when we're going to start seeing people changing their LinkedIn profiles from AI expert to quantum expert. And that's the moment where I think it's important to pay attention to not only the signals, but to have already had the policy discussions and debates. Because if I'm a country and I just start those debates in 3 or 4 years from now, I'm already too late, because I'm going to just hold up innovation. Where I'd rather kind of break things early, right? We do that a lot as startup founders, is you go in and you kind of try and break things as quickly as you can so that you can improve on that. And I think that's where we are with quantum.
Maybe to round things out, Matt, because this has just been such a great discussion. But again, I'm so impressed with your level of practitionership in being able to understand and articulate and translate new technologies. I'm curious, what is it about you that enables you and allows you to step in front of these technologies and bring people closer to them? It takes a certain level of confidence, sometimes maybe even an audacity, to say, hey, like, we really do need to pay attention to this in a world where technology is moving pretty quickly, and it's not like AI or quantum is going to go away, but things could change. So is there a certain level of kind of like confidence or maybe it's ownership that you have as a leader to be able to represent these new technologies in a world where things are moving so quickly, and you probably have a lot of doubters, naysayers, and people that don't want to get involved?
I mean, everyone jokes that quantum is always saying that it's 5 years away. So that's just one aspect to it. Yeah. But we're in the International Year of Quantum and Science and Technology right now, and never have I seen so much of an outpouring of a community that's going out, educating people every day. And this is a topic that at face value, if you're looking at it, you're going to quickly click onto the next screen, right? Or you're gonna never get into it because it seems too big. And candidly, it is. But if you settle into it and you recognize, that you don't have to become an expert. Like, I don't know how to program an iPhone, but yet I use it every day. And I think that that's really important to think about. And I think broadening our minds, right? And it's getting to the point now where you genuinely have to do a lot of research on subjects. You have to get into a community. I mean, I've spent over a year now of going out to conferences and meeting physicists and talking to them and having these conversations. Yeah. And I've never met a group of people that are more welcoming of an outsider. And I love that about the quantum community, because I, again, will have conversations with the lead at the most amazing company publicly traded that you could imagine. And they're just as excited to meet me as I am them. And, they're just so passionate about what they're doing. And it's very different from what I saw in Silicon Valley back in the day, where, I had an idea for something. I couldn't tell anyone about it because I was too afraid of somebody stealing it. Yeah. A lot of people joke today, like, great, I'm going to tell you what my idea is, but the chances of you actually being able to do it are like zero. Yeah. So it's just been incredible meeting people. But I would say the best research or the best resource that I tell everyone to go out after is IBM's Quantum Decade. So they wrote a book that I think is just so digestible. Your Saturday morning coffee when you wake up, it's something, an hour or two, you'll finish the whole thing. And what I love about it is it's spoken at, very plain speak, so everyone, you and I, can understand it. But at the end of the book, they have a huge section for practical applications. So these are areas where, great, you now have a basic understanding of what quantum computing or quantum technologies can do. But now we're going to tell you how it's going to impact the world in all of the different areas. And it is mind-blowing, anything from maritime to logistics to, again, healthcare, space technologies, drug discoveries. So it really kind of covers this broad spectrum of really where this is going to have a huge impact. So it's called the Quantum Decade. You can Google it and grab it. It's a digital download. And again, I think that out of all the companies, they've done a great job at communicating that. I
appreciate that resource. What are you most excited about the next 6 to 12 months at Quantum Coast Capital?
Look, I think it's, we've been meeting with a number of companies over the last several months and doing significant diligence on the space. And right now there's probably about 4 companies that we're looking to deploy capital to that I just think are absolute rock star founders, just incredible moats that they're able to defend. And honestly too, like, I think that it's this time period where we're going to see this sort of barbell structure take into effect, where in the next 2-3 years from now, we're going to have a lot of acquisitions and roll-ups in the space, because again, there's a huge talent shortage. And then, we'll see some unicorns in this sort of 7, 8, 9, 10 year category. But where I really get excited about is just getting people more educated about quantum technology. I'm excited every day that I wake up, or every day that I meet with another founder, to learn more. And again, it's somewhat overwhelming at points, even for me and my team. But we're really excited to see this whole space evolve.
I love it. Matt, thank you so much for bringing your expertise and demonstrating the practitionership that it takes to bring the outside in. We call it bringing the outside in. One of the most core capabilities of a leader and a strategist is the ability to bring the outside in a way that is understandable and digestible. And Matt, you demonstrate that every day. So thank you.
No, thank you so much. And again, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm very active.
Yes.
And if people want to reach out to me, I welcome it. Like, don't hesitate to just ping me and say, let's have a quick 15-minute or something,
Yeah.
you know, and talk about this further, because it is important to get out there. And what I love about it too is whenever I meet somebody and they're hearing the word quantum for the first time, inevitably the next day, you know, I don't know if this is the algorithm or something, but they're like, oh, I saw 2 articles on quantum, you know, and now I can actually understand what it is that I was reading. So it's exciting times. But again, I'm always available to people and making some introductions.
One of the most fruitful prompts that I wrote in prep for this episode was asking ChatGPT to summarize Matt Cimaglia's perspective on quantum computing. I said, go to LinkedIn, read all of his articles, give me a bit of a summary on kind of his approach, and a couple of like really powerful quotes that came from his articles. For those of you who are interested in learning more, get the book from IBM. Follow Matt on LinkedIn. He writes regularly on LinkedIn and posts great insights as well.
Every Sunday morning I post sort of whatever that week's thoughts were,
Yeah.
or something that I learned. And it's for a more digestible audience, so people that aren't in quantum. It's always great to get some feedback.
Love it. Matt, thank you as always. We'll be excited to have you back sometime soon.
Looking forward to it.
All right. Thank you. All right. What an episode. I mean, as a tried and true computer nerd myself, I can say that was such a fun conversation. But what I'm so surprised at week over week is that, you know, this episode was so much more than the future of computing. It really had a lot to do with the way that we see the world as leaders, the way that we open ourselves to new opportunities, and the way that we bring big ideas from the outside into our organizations. So whether you've got a background in AI, technology, computers or not, we hope you got a lot out of this episode. I know I did. We go live every Thursday at 3 p.m. Central. You can find this episode as well as all previous episodes at thoughttium.com/live. Again, we want to thank our LinkedIn community for joining us today. Feel free to drop a comment or a question, and we'll make sure that we funnel those to Matt. If you've got any questions on how to get in touch with Matt, please reach out to me. You can find him on LinkedIn as well, too. We will see you all next Thursday. Have a great rest of the week.